From of the world to the heart of innovation, this is Opportunities to Consider with your host, author, speaker, and corporate strategist, Hunter Gaylor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Markets Hunter March update. And by the way, I will tell you, it's been March Madness, crazy things going on in the market. But today I'm very excited. We have back a very good colleague and guest of mine, Tim, who is the CEO of DLYT. Their stock symbol is DLYT. We'll be bringing him in shortly. But before we do, I just want to thank everyone for all of our subscribers and listeners that are listening to us across all platforms. The ratings are going through the roof. Our subscribership is continuing to grow at an exponential rate. We've got a lot of really great coverage happening, and it's all because of you, the listeners, asking the right questions. But what we're going to talk about now with Tim as we bring him in, and let's go ahead and bring in Tim right now. Tim, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure.
Tim, as I was just filling in with our audience, we always like to have these in-depth conversations with companies on where they're going. And you and I, we've been having weekly conversations, and it's going to continue to be going because we really like what your company's doing. We think it's not just good for the marketplace, but we think it's good for human beings. And last conversation we had was about, PFAS and what was going on with the artificial turf. We talked about some of the stuff that was happening with some of these athletic players that are playing on these artificial turfs in the MLB, the National Baseball League, and the NFL, and talked about some of the cancer-causing issues that are now coming out because of the fact that we have a lot of these forever chemicals. And in some of your and I's discussions outside of the show, I just want to bring this off. There was an article that came out with this physics.org, FAYH.org, and it's an incredible article, and I just want to highlight one little piece of it and then get your take on it. Drinking water in several cities and regions in China contain high levels of, and granted, I was not an English major, so this is perfluoroalkyl, right? Or however PFAS, right? PFAS. And all of the substances, and according to a study that was published in the Environmental Sciences in Europe, this is a deadly, outbreak of the chemicals and PFAS in the water supply. And if that's what's happening in China, and I know you're working all throughout, various regions and things like that, but given what DLYT, the technology that you have, I want to address this article first before we go into a couple of other talking points that we want to cover this evening. So go ahead, and Tim, and give me your feedback on this particular article.
Well, China has been the manufacturer for the world for 30, 40 years. So being as forever chemicals are an issue that manufacture, sure, you have to expect that's going to be the case. The Chinese are doing a comprehensive look at what the problem is. They're getting their hands around it. We work with an organization in China, incredibly professional, and they're charged with doing just that. At the end of this year, their recommendations, early next year at the latest, recommendations for PFAS. So it's moving quickly, and yes, they have a problem, but they will address it rapidly.
So, Tim, one of the things we talked about last time was this wastewater runoff of these chemicals that happens from artificial turf. And one of the big talking points that was big for me that I took away from our conversation, which kind of hit home for a second, because, having gone to these various elementary schools and schools and whatnot that have artificial turf, I didn't realize the fact that this PFAS is so embedded in our everyday life. And I think a little bit more so, especially in the school systems today. And I want to use this episode and what we're talking about today to really kind of highlight what's going on with the school board systems. What do we need to do to kind of alert the fact that, we're being exposed to this on a daily basis. And I just don't believe the general public understands this, Tim.
Hunter, with the capabilities that you have, that you possess, the school boards need help, in my opinion, because they're being pummeled with all sorts of things. Is it ventilation associated with pandemic? How do you do anything about the school? How do you make sure that the kids have the right lighting so that their eyes adjust correctly? All these things, and they're incredibly technical. You could do that as a service for them. Bring them to hunters, whatever you want to call it, and say, okay, these are all the things that people are hitting you for all the time, and go through, in my opinion, there's 7 different categories. Go through those 7 every week or every couple weeks and update them, because they don't know what to do, and they've got money. They hire people, but the people they hire are engineers, and they're really wonderful engineers. But how do you know that they're up on the latest and greatest? I don't know. So my point is this: the school board, if you do, devil if you don't position. I do know that if you bring up some of these things with the parents around, they're really, I've attended a few school board meetings, and it's pretty interesting. Let's put it that way. They're worried about their kids.
You know, Tim, that's very interesting. You said 7 categories. Can you highlight for our audience what these 7 categories are? Obviously, there's ventilation, there's water, there's obviously some of these other things. But for the sake of our audience listening, for this particular conversation that we're having, what would some of those 7 categories be?
Well, you start with the very first turn of the wheel onto the property, the parking lots, the safety of people in the schools, the lighting in the schools, all of it ties together. And you come up with 7 major categories at the end of it. And to go through each one at this point today is not going to happen. But
sure,
I will get that for you and send it to you. Sure. But the point is, you do that, and then you make them an ally. You bring them on because best. I really do believe that. They really are.
Well, I think, Tim, one of the conversations we've always had is about the innovation that is occurring through a lot of these different, I'll call it columns, if you will, right? We have ventilation, we have purification, we have air, we have ventilation, we have all these different things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. And I think one of the things that we want to be able to cover is, what is DAIS doing, and let's just talk for the sake of this conversation on the ventilation side, right? If ventilation was being applied today, what are some of the positive benefits we would be receiving as a result of it?
If you or I were in high school today and you put one of the DAIS conserve systems in, which we've done just this year, this first quarter of 2023, we've done in 14 different school districts around the country.
Okay, that's a big number. 14 different schools.
I would score up to 20%, Hunter, 20% higher on standardized tests. Now, I recognize that people are trying to move standardized tests out and blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is, because of the increased amount of oxygen in your head, in your breath, all around you, you're smarter, you're more productive.
Right.
It's proven. You've got NIH studies, you have companies like Carrier and Daikin all support that. That's what Conserve does. Conserve is a ventilation product. So you're smarter, you're healthier, because it removes the triggers for asthma and allergies.
I mean, that's an incredible point right there, Tim. I'm smarter and healthier just by having your product. So I should be using this in my office every day if it makes me smarter and healthier every day. I mean, this is great.
Well, that's the point. I mean, that's why we're talking, because I've said to you many times, DAIS should be larger than Microsoft in terms of size, but nobody knows we exist. So we're leaning on you to help us out there.
Well, we're doing everything in our power that we can, and getting that word out, which I think is absolutely paramount. And for anyone listening, we're obviously talking with Tim, who's the CEO of DAIS. Their stock symbol is DLYT. Make sure you follow them. All of their links will be under our videos and all of our platforms. For anyone listening to the podcast, where this is just the audio podcast, we're obviously across, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere where podcasts are downloaded, which is very important. Tim, I just want to talk about a couple of more quick things, because I know this is a quick weekly update that we're doing, and I just want to kind of talk about this. With PFAS, and obviously what DAIS has done with some of their technology applications, what can companies do that may be outside of the municipalities to say, hey, look, you know what? I don't like what the municipalities are doing. how can they get in touch with you, and how do they engage with you, whether it's a municipality or a private business or some sort of enterprise that wants to work with Deus, saying, look, we don't want to be exposed to this stuff. We obviously like the information that you're putting out, but I mean, what is your recommendation from a business development perspective, Tim, on how these companies can obviously get in touch with you and then obviously work with you?
Sure. Well, thank you. Simple answer is the internet. My gosh, that's the center of everything. DeusNano.com brings you to the website, and send an email. There's a phone number. And next time we meet, I'll make sure I have a little banner with the phone, or I'll hold it up.
We'll put it here, so it's no problem.
So we'd love to chat about it. A fellow that does the sales and marketing, wonderful job. His name is Jacob Biggs. Jacob is incredibly knowledgeable about all facets of ventilation. And it really is, it's an area that people just didn't appreciate until the pandemic. It's the V in HVAC. It plays a large role in not only the costs of your heating and cooling, but your comfort. And that's what we're working on. It's not only ventilation, but we've got the next generation of what we call air conditioning. We reinvent it. We use not gases and compressors. We use a little bit of water, a little bit of vacuum, and the polymer. So,
well, I think that's a huge selling point, right? It's the next gen of air conditioning. I mean, people go buy cars and I like this model, and then I want to get the upgraded model. But I mean, think about your health for a second here. If I have HVAC1 and there's a new upgraded model that's going to give me all of these healthy benefits, right? That's going to make me, quote, smarter and healthier. I'm going to want that. So of course people are going to go over to Deus, which is incredible. Tim, I just want to ask in closing, just two quick questions for your company, right? One is, we've talked about what you're doing in HVAC. We've talked about what you're doing in PFAS. We've talked about all these things that are happening in Europe, and people, I encourage to go back and listen to the evolvement of where we started with Deus and where Deus has come now, with a lot of, development. And, they are working with a multinational conglomerate company, which is helping them roll out. They're in the CRISPR drawer of a major large entity, which is probably rolling out to your homes for keeping your vegetables, crisper and fresher and longer, which is huge. And we do a lot of salads in our house, so I like that. But Tim, what are some of the exciting developments happening in the company right now that you want people to hear about?
Gosh, there's so many of them. The issue is focus for us, because it's the things you can do with this material set. And to give everybody kind of a quick summary, we've developed the material set, that nanomaterial, and you can use the features of the materials to replace pumps, motors, things that use a lot of electricity, things. And the product that it results is more efficient, less emissions. So it's truly a sustainable product. So the point is, you look at some of these things. What's the exciting ones? Gosh, HVAC, where you can handle certain things differently than you do today. But the thing with that is that that's kind of a geeky thing.
Sure.
You talk about the CRISPR drawer. That's something that everybody can relate to, because a third of all the food that's purchased is thrown away. So it gets that back for you. And what it does is the material senses what the environment is inside of the CRISPR drawer, what is outside of the CRISPR drawer, and it makes the two of them as quickly as possible equal, so that the things that are in the CRISPR drawer last longer. So now all of a sudden, instead of lettuce lasting for, a week, it lasts 3 weeks. Instead of a commercial entity shipping pineapples, that every day they lose sweetness, and by day, I think it's day 8, they can't use them anymore. Now you extend that to day 16. That's huge.
Well, I mean, and that goes to even other what I like to call unknown opportunities here, and that's food waste, food waste prevention, like a lot of things that go into this. So I think these are incredible. And ladies and gentlemen, I mean, if you're not following this company, their stock symbol is DLYT. I mean, follow them. It's Deus. As he said, you can go to DeusNano.com, get more information, follow their company. They're all over Twitter. We have them. Follow our social networks. We're reposting Deus all the time, which is incredible. We like following the company because we at least in this household, care about health, right? And as far as anything that we're concerned about, we like sharing the companies that are doing actual innovation that are helping us, which is incredible. So, Tim, thank you so much for joining me once again. I just have one final question for the show. I know we're coming up on the end of it here shortly, but from an HVAC perspective, what are some of the developments that you're excited about that are on the horizon that you may be able to talk about and share for the audience that's kind of maybe forward looking? You're not revealing too much information, but kind of exciting us a little bit with some cool new innovations coming
Sure.
out?
I mean, if you talk about what we're doing with the large multinational company,
Sure.
we're taking dehumidification that is done normally with a system today with, like I said before, gas and pumps and things like that. It doesn't have any of that. It's water and the membrane, and we handle the humidification and the dehumidification with a little bit of water, and we change the temperature to do so. There's no gas. It will do cooling, chill. So it's truly revolutionary. It's quiet. You don't have any of these things. The big thing with HVAC is it's got to be tested and tested and tested and tested. That's where we are today. So anybody wants to be a tester, have them get a hold of me.
Well, I think that's an incredible way to leave this off, Tim, and I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. But I mean, when people realize it's not just the purification and all these other things that are going in the HVAC, but it has to do with noise. I mean, we don't want loud, noisy air conditioners running. I mean, we can't sleep at night because of it. It's terrible. So from a user perspective, it seems incredible. So we're obviously going to
But
continue.
there's one little point that I think, and it's real simple, and that is a modest adoption. And I say modest, 10, 12% of the world today that we live in. If you adopt this type of technology, and we can take out 5 billion metric tons, 5 billion metric tons of CO2 annually. That's a lot. When you're trying to save 50, you got 10% by just flowing things by plastic. So
well, I mean, that's incredible. And we're obviously following this. We're obviously, I'm going to say we're passionate about PFAS and how to replace it in a more healthier, natural way.
absolutely.
So
we'll talk more about that the happening in PFAS. So next time we chat, we'll do a little bit more.
And ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Tim, for saying that. But ladies and gentlemen of the audience that are listening, and for all of our listeners nationwide, we just want to say, these are not just conversations that are one-off. These are ongoing conversations with the company. This is why we work with these companies. We want to get with them early. We want to follow through their journey so we can document the journey. We can hear from the leaders themselves. And we think it's incredibly important to continue this conversation on where the company's going, the different innovation levels. So, Tim, thank you so much for sharing and opening up and talking about your company. It means a lot to us and our audience, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much, Tim.
Well, thank you for opening people's eyes, because as I said early on in the segment today, this is incredible, and I'd like more people to know about it. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's not white lab coats. This stuff works.
Well, and I think that's incredible. So, Tim, thank you for joining us today on the show.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Take care.
Will do. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on another episode of The Markets Hunter. We love to bring you conversations like this, having conversations with people like Tim that are the innovators of our generation that are coming out, and they are doing incredible work on things that actually affect us, our families, our children, our school systems, and things that affect us every day. I mean, when we go out to the gym and we're working on artificial turf, I mean, people don't realize this stuff is made with PFAS. So it allows us to be more conscientious as to what's really happening on throughout society. So we really, really appreciate that. And we really appreciate Tim for joining us. All of the information for the company is going to be posted at the links below, as I always say and disclose that during all of our programming. So make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. Make sure you follow Deus. Make sure you follow the $ DLYT. And if you go to our site, we're going to have some swag where we are also promoting DLYT, which is very important as well. So if there's anything that you saw in this interview that intrigued you, or you think other people or companies or businesses should, perhaps listen to, feel free to send this out, tag it, put it on YouTube, put it on, Twitter, share it out with your friends. We're across all platforms, so we're really, really grateful for everyone that's listening to our program, and we're always constantly appreciative to our audience. So we once again thank Tim, and we appreciate you for joining us. And as always, thank you for joining and being a Markets Hunter, because at the end of the day, we're hunting the best opportunities.